Welcome back to the call. This is our second episode. It's the Bible Outdoorsman and Dr. Scott Whittle. Good to have you back, and we're excited about this episode and what we have to share with you and what's been going on in our lives and what's been going on around us. And it's been a busy couple of days. This morning, Scott, I was up at Providence Ministry speaking to the men there going through rehab and enjoyed my time just pouring into them. And letting them know that they've all have a call on their life and that God has something for them. And so that's what's been going on in my world. What's been going on with you?
Lots of technical new adventures trying to learn how to do this podcast. So hopefully you guys will bear with us. We've taken a lot of the comments that you guys put on our first one. We were closer together. Hopefully we get the sound and stuff, the quality taken care of. Also getting great feedback. One of the things that we like is for you guys to like and subscribe. It helps us to kind of know what's going on. It also helps us for content development, and that's one of the things that we're on there. One of the questions that we're going to cover, which we are now nationwide, we've got one of a subscriber on the West Coast, which is awesome, and he had a question for us, Stacy, which was how we define what a real man is. And I think that was his name is Ranger Randy. He and I are very good friends. We actually were college fraternity brothers. He has been in special forces with the Rangers and with the Pathfinders, has a life of excitement, but I think it's just knowing the type of personality he is and the kind of core person he is. He's lived in California for a number of years, and I think it's made him almost self-doubt himself at times. So I'm gonna turn it over to you. What do you think defines a man?
You know, we had this discussion yesterday. We had an amazing discussion yesterday and kind of dove in deep into it, and I think, with our I guess kind of religious views and defining a man is we just go back to scripture. God made Adam and Eve and he made man. So, man is that through biology. We know what a man is. The definition of a man has radically changed in the last 50 years. And we want to get back to what it really means to be a man. To be, what God has created us to be and who we are and that masculinity and the provider, the caveman kind of guy, that just, that we're designed to be, we're designed to be men and defining a man, and just looking at what a man should be and what a man's supposed to be is so messed up basically in our day and time.
And we even got off on the topic yesterday, and Stacy and I were talking. I said, in a generation now that has instant knowledge, right? You can go, and I laugh at my grandson. He's constantly asking questions, and I say that you could do it at the fingertips, right? And I said, as smart as we are, all right, at this stage in mankind, think how easily we were deceived. That's what we got on this whole topic, is that we can't even define now the differences between what we think a man and a woman are. We're even questioning one another on that. And I said, the great deceiver has deceived us all in that. So hopefully as we go through these series of podcasts, we will more define it for you guys. We want it to be a kind of a safe place, because I think that's the other reason why Stacy and I started this podcast, was to try to give men a place where we could discuss those topics, not feel like we're going to be threatened, not feel like we're going to be ridiculed for it, but to kind of express those values and beliefs and know that you are not the minority, right? You are actually the majority. More people, I think like you do than less people do. So that's one of the things that we're going to dive into. We've got a lot of things that we're going to do, and I think this episode we're going to talk about definitely. Going to talk about turkey hunting, the stuff that we've got. The other thing we want to do a shout out for one of our sponsors, which is Turtle Box, for you guys that have them. They're awesome. As my son says, that it's the best speaker that he has ever had in his life. So these guys were very gracious to us. They sent us a sponsor banner, so we want to give them a shout out. Another shout out that we want to do is definitely for Tim the Canvas Man. For you guys that don't know Tim is in North Georgia. He does incredible work on boat covers. If you're looking for a towable boat cover, we just had one done for my boat, and I told him I'd give him a shout out.
It looks amazing. I mean, it really looks good, and he fits those custom to your boat, and we use our boats year round. I mean, we use them during the season, and all out of the season, going to sandbars, and so yeah, he does an amazing job. Tim does a wonderful, wonderful job.
So what do you want to open up the floor on today?
Well,
Stacey?
let's just talk about what's been going on in our lives here the last few weeks, last few days. And, I know speaking of boats, you've been working on boats, and it seems like you've got more and more duck boats lining up to repair. They just take a beating during the season, and everything gets jarred loose, trying to run to a hole, get to a hole. It seems like they just take a pounding, and I've noticed that you're the guy that people are going to now. My boys are bringing their boat to you, and I'll be taking my boat to you, and so it's just repairing the things that we kind of beat up during the season. And for duck hunters, man, your stuff, your gear, everything goes through a beating. That's why it's so important to have good gear, good stuff. I mean, that's why we carry the shotguns that we carry. That's why we wear the brand of clothing that we wear, just because we know what kind of pounding those things are going to take. And so what's been going on with the duck boats?
Well, I definitely have become, I guess, a person who has become more acquainted with duck boats. Here recently, I was very lucky this year. Stacey took me as the guide and took me every time I needed to go with the duck boat. And then here recently, I've actually acquired a duck boat. My son was in the process of building one, and we're working on it from everything from lights. And then we have one of our young hunters, Tanner Morgan, who is helping us. We basically did a completely overhaul of that. Now, for you guys that don't know that, my background is actually electrical engineering, so the wiring part is pretty easy to me. The customizing part, I guess, it depends on each person's flavor. We've kind of taken, and I think it's unique. We laugh this next year. We think we're going to have the floating armada going into Arkansas because we've got so many duck boats now, but I think each one is individual, right? It's also a creation of what works best for you. Stacey's got an incredible boat where I told them the one thing that I envy on his is in the early morning hours, because I got bad eyesight, is that he's got these incredible lights that he can turn on and actually see everything, where he's putting out decoys in case they drift, that he can go back and adjust them before we get out of the boat. So those are some cool things that I think are out there. These gun boxes, I know a lot of people are looking at that. My son and I were talking about it, and I said, one of the things that I learned this year personally, I don't know if I like the gun boxes. I guess that was my question. They take on a lot of water sometimes.
Yeah.
I haven't seen one that I've known that has been 100% dry, and I don't want to put an expensive shotgun in a gun box that I think is going to collect water and stay in there. That's my thing.
Yeah, I've never been a fan of the gun box, and so I'm kind of glad mine doesn't have it on there. And it's just, to me, it's a little bit of a waste of space, and I'm sure, if you use it on yours, don't take that as an offense. Like, well, I use my gun box. I just, like you, Scott, I found out that it holds a lot of moisture and it gets water in there. And so I've never preferred a gun box on my boat. And so it's worked out good. We just throw our guns on there. If you watch some of our videos, if you go to our YouTube channel, you'll be seeing videos of us, going into riding down the river or whatever. We'll put those on later on, just to kind of show you guys how we do it, and how our setup is on our boat. It's crowded, it's messed up, and the whole reason I think we're getting these boats, is my desire is to bring more men, and to introduce men into the duck hunting world, and to introduce young men into the duck hunting world, to get them out there, to get them out of their houses, get them, doing men stuff, just hanging out, talking men talk, being transparent, being real, and just having a good time. It's that's what it's about. That's why I love duck hunting over anything else. Basically, I love to turkey hunt, and we'll talk about turkeys later on. But I love just getting out there with my buddies, and just having fun. If we don't kill nothing, watching somebody fall in is hilarious.
Yeah. Stacey loves to watch me fall in the water. That's the crazy part.
This year, I said, look, you haven't duck hunted unless you've fallen in. If you're going to duck hunt, I guarantee you, especially in the flooded timber or anywhere where there's thick mud. I've been doing it for a long time, but I still, to this day, find myself falling in one way or another. It used to be a whole lot more, it happened a lot more when I was younger, and now I've learned to walk slower and make sure my steps, are are appropriate and stepping in the right places, but you're going to fall in. And just having that laugh and being able to laugh at each other and just talk and be real and share, what's going on in our world and our life, and just being out there with the guys. And that's why I'm glad we're getting more boats.
Yeah.
And so. My twins bought a boat just here recently, and an Edge, and it's really nice, and so they're excited about that. So we've got 2 boats at our house. I think you got 2 or 3 at your house.
Yeah.
And so it's, but duck boats, speaking of that, get you more places. And I tell these younger guys, it's hard, especially here in North Georgia and even Arkansas. If you don't have a duck boat, it's impossible to hunt Arkansas, especially the public land. Now, private land, if you're going with a guide, they have all that stuff. They take you right to where you need to go, and it's easy. But if you're hunting public like we do mostly, and that's all I've done for a long, long time. I've only hunted private twice or 2 or 3 times out there. But, Reelfoot and Tennessee, you got to have a duck boat. Arkansas, the White River, the Black River, you've got to have a duck boat to get to the holes. And so it just makes it, it gives you more opportunity to places to hunt, even right around here, And so,
I agree, because I'm new. All right. So I'm the novice. I kind of sit there and watch and try to learn how to do it. Duck hunting to me has been a thing. A couple of years ago, I joke about it. My wife, I started buying duck hunting stuff, and I kept buying it and never went, never got invited. And my wife says, "Why do you keep buying all this stuff?" And she goes, I said, "Well, I feel like a girl going to the dance. I'm just waiting for a chance, right?"
And
so
preparing for rain,
preparing for it. You're trying to get all the stuff out there, which makes it great. I always say this: if you haven't been duck hunting, it is probably the way I define it is it's like going to the biggest tailgate party you've ever been to.
That's right.
And it's just a lot of fun. You don't have to be super quiet like you do in other type of hunting. There's more of a camaraderie that goes with it. Guys are giving each other a hard time. Somebody might be cooking. Somebody might be on, moving the boat. It's a whole lot
setting
decoys. There's a whole component to it. You have what I call the technical part, right? Having the best spot is and having people that know where the best spots are, that's one thing. But then the technical part starts to come in. That's having the right decoy spread, the right setup, and then the calling. The calling is unto itself a skill set that is not easily mastered. You can pick different calls. Everybody's got their favorite call that they like to do. Each one's super effective in how you use. I think that for me as the novice, I've tried to focus this year, because we are more exposed to wood ducks, and trying to learn wood duck calling, right? Because it's already a hard call to do, but it's also for us, because we don't see a lot of the migratory patterns here in Northwest Georgia, we try to focus on those. And then any ducks that come after that, we're after those.
That's true. And we've seen that this year. And here's the question, and I know the answer to this because I've done it for so long, and I've hunted these North Georgia, this area. Can you call a wood duck?
You say that you could do it. I haven't seen it personally now, have one come in. I could shoot a wood duck.
Shooting a wood duck's like shooting a clay at 40 miles an hour. And so, they're flying by, they're zooming by. I have called wood ducks to me after they've landed on the water, but I've never really called one into a spread because usually I always determine they have a destination, they're going there, they know where they're going, and I just want to be from, the in-between area where they're flying from and flying to. That way we can intercept them. That's how we do it here. Intercept them where they're heading to. And if we're lucky enough for them to land in our spread or in front of us, then that's good. And the limits here, you only get 3 each, and so it's fast and furious. When you're hunting wood ducks in North Georgia, it's fast and furious. So that's why it's important to bring more men. We want the boats to be filled. That way we can, if we shoot a limit, it's usually with 4 guys, you got 12 ducks, and that's a better eating. You get more to eat, and I love to eat wood ducks.
I have tasted them. They are good.
It's amazing. I can trick my wife into thinking it's steak and convince her that it's steak, and she'll eat it. But and getting back to just getting out there, I think every little boy loves, somewhere, especially, growing up, you just love being in the mud, you love being outside. We grew up in a time, Scott, where you were outside all the time. If you got in trouble, you had to come in. That was punishment to us, was, hey, you go to your room. I'm like, no, I'm gonna be outside. And from sun up to sundown, here in the South, we were outside climbing trees, playing war, running through the woods, being boys, getting hurt, getting stitched up, all this stuff, fighting each other. And so I think, that's what I love about duck hunting is that you can get out there and it's like that little boy comes back out, and you just get to go out there and you get in the mud, you get to, trample through the flooded timber, get into your hole, and it's just fun. I mean, it really is fun. And I know it's been made very popular over the last 10, 15 years, hunting. And so, but I encourage that. And just getting out there and watching creation come to life, and just seeing God. It's like that song, That's Where I Find God, is just watching God wake up creation. Hearing those birds start chirping. And I know right then it's about time to start harvesting ducks as when those birds start chirping and just having that fellowship, just bonding with guys, talking about what's going on, being transparent, being real, sharing our story, sharing, what's going on in our lives, and just having that place, just having that. I think every man needs that place where they can go and be real with other men. Hey, my marriage ain't working well, or hey, my kids I'm about to choke one out. But, just having that, and you can't, a lot of times, and me being a pastor, and, all these years, it's hard to find that in churches. You can't, Scott and I go to church together, and we don't have time to sit around and talk about, after church or before church, hey, what's going on and all that. But we do out there in the duck hole.
I use the train. We're going to try to edit the train. We're trying to get around that. So, I think the other thing that we find, and Stacy and I got on this topic yesterday, as I said, as a very young boy, I used to take my son and I used to give these lessons, right? And Stacy and I are going to start putting these lessons. He does the devotionals. I'm going to try to start doing lessons. And I call it the lesson of 5, right? When you're born, if you look down at your hand, you got 5 digits on it. And I think God is unique in that he gives us memories of things to remember. And I told him, I said, I used to tell my son, that's the number of true friends that you're going to have, right? And as a young kid, every time he played ball, that he was number 5. Right? And I said, you'll never have more. All right, you'll be lucky if you have 1 or 2. And I think that as an adult, I look back at that, and that's the person that you can call when all the world is falling down around you and you feel like you have no friends, right? But you covet those people, right? You know that those are your core people. And I try to tell everybody, you spend time and you work on those relationships with that you become that person to another person, right? That they trust you enough that they're going to pick up that phone, whatever the issue's going on. And my son all the time asked me, he said, how did you become wise? I said, I'm not wise by any means. I said, trust me, God has used me in so many things. I said, I've gotten drugged from one side of the road to the other because I wouldn't do what he wanted. I said, I'd get a bloody nose, black eye, and he'd pick me back up. So my lessons have been hard lived lessons. And I want to give you this insight so that you don't have to experience those, right? I would love for you to say, hey, and I always say this, if I'd have had a mentor like me and Stacy years ago, I was hard-headed. Oh, I know I was. But I think that if I had somebody that I truly trusted, I would have said, well, you know what? Hey, man, maybe they got some insight that I need to think about it. Maybe I'm going to ask questions. That's really what we want this show to become for you guys. So send us the question.
Yeah, and that's the scope of this podcast.
Yeah.
I think that's you and I here in our town. We can take a few guys hunting. We can hang out with a few young men and try to help them and develop them and pour into them. But with this podcast being so vast, we can really, that's our goal is to pour into men. We want to pour into men in every state, every town, and that's what it's about is us, giving back to what we've been given, and sharing what we, and it may not fit for your life. You may be in the city somewhere and you're like, man, I don't get to hunt. I don't get to go do those things. And maybe you can live some of that through our experiences, through our stories and what we've been through. And like Scott's son said, Scott he's got a vast plane of wisdom. And so I was kidding with him yesterday. I was like, it's the wit and wisdom of Scott Whittle, and so he's always willing to share it. And so I'll tell him, I was like, I'm sending my boys down there and just let them spend like a couple of days with you that you can just pour into them. And so, and that's what we want to do, man. We want to pour into you and let's talk about, we got, Scott's we've got a new logo.
Yeah.
And so we've got a logo now and I want to talk about that logo and just explain to people, because when you see it, can't really get it until you understand it. And then once you see it, you can't unsee it. So Scott, if you would just share just a little bit about what went into the logo, what this logo represents, and just tell us and talk to us about the logo.
So when we sat down, Stacy and I were trying to think of different ideas that we wanted to bring apart. We wanted to bring the outdoors part. So we're looking at different factors of hunting and the fishing, the whole 9 yards. So first I was like, hey, maybe we need to try to see if we can do it with an AI logo generator. So we started sitting down and I was typing in words because you're just trying to see what kind of things it'll throw back. And then I started thinking about the insight that we wanted from a spiritual side, right? Something from that we really wanted to make people think of God and what we're doing. So we start typing these words in. So this logo starts to pop up, and immediately as it's creating, I'm like, dude, that's not what I originally intended. But that thing is so more than what I expected. So when you look at our logo, the first thing you'll notice is it looks like almost like a V, but that's actually two cliffs, right? The cliffs, for me, symbolize just like we are. We're calling all men. All men must answer, right? You're in a situation that you must make a decision, and you're on the cliff. What are you going to do? Are you going to stay where you're at? Or are you going to jump, right? And that first jump, and I always tell everybody, in this lifetime, it's hard to get people to take risk. And there's so much reward sometimes from taking risks. So when you jump, the one thing that I love that the logo did is it put this circle around the two cliffs, right? And I told Stacy, to me, that symbolized God's grace. God's grace is no matter whether you make the right decision or you make the wrong decision, you're still surrounded by God's grace. He's going to help you no matter what. And it's no different than you being fathers, the guys that have kids out there, you beg them not to do things and they do it anyway, and you say, you shouldn't do that. And I always used to laugh. I would tell my son sometimes, I was like, I see you going for the hot stove and I'm trying to do everything I can. And I look at God as the Father, and he's looking at this thing and he's trying to protect you in every situation that he can. He's trying to keep you from doing it, but sometimes you just do it, right? And it happens. It's a mistake. What are we going to do to fix that mistake? Yeah. So this logo kind of came out of that, and we've really tried to capitalize on it. It's a decision, but it's also a standing point that as men, we have to make decisions for what's best for our families, what's best for us, what's best for everybody. And sometimes hindsight, I always say this, 2020, we don't always have hindsight when we're making these decisions. And I think that if we can help you to get the best tool set. And if you really want to think about this podcast as a tool set, right? Every day it's a screwdriver here, it's a level there, it's a hammer here. We're building your toolbox. We're getting you ready for that first job that you're going to have and what you're going to do with that and how you're going to approach it. That's what the insight becomes for this. So that's kind of what the logo means to me.
And it's so cool. I mean, it really is. And when Scott presented that to me, I was like, that's it, man. That is cool. I mean, that's perfect. I mean, it explains everything that we want to be about, and being surrounded by God's grace and Him allowing us to make such certain decisions, when we come to those cliff points and those cliffs in our lives, and learning from those lessons. I tell my boys, my youngest one had a ball game last night, they lost. I said, it's not a loss, it's a lesson, learn from it. I said, in life you're gonna have times where you fail, you're gonna have times where you're defeated. Learn from those things. God's building your platform, God's building, He's writing your story, and don't look at it as a loss. Look at it as something that you can build from, that you can grow from, that you can help others, from. Like I was telling Scott this morning, I was up in Dalton, Georgia at Providence Ministry. They have a rehab, place up there, and so I was talking to men, some about 30 or 40 men, and just sharing with them that even though I'm a follower of Christ, I still mess up and I still fall short every day. It's a lesson, and if you're called, you're writing your own story. We all have our unique stories. I mean, Scott's is different than mine, and we're all different, and so, but it's all unique and it's all special to help you in writing that story. And so, as Scott said, if you've got questions or anything that you want to talk about, that you want us to discuss on this podcast, we're going to make it about you guys and men and how we can help you. We may not always have the answers, but I guarantee we'll research and we'll find and we'll dig. And that's the same thing with you know, the Bible. I always tell folks, if I don't know it, I'll find out. You know, if you come to me with a question about the Bible, and I've had that for over the years, people want to know this or that, and I'm like, well, if I don't know it, let me go find out. I'm going to dig into it, and I want to give you the best answer that I can to help you in your everyday walk. And so that's what this podcast is for, and what it's all about. And we don't want to take up much of your time every day, because we know that time is as we talked about before, it's our greatest commodity. We can't never get it back. You can't put a price on your time. But we want to help you. We want it to be something that helps you every day as a man.
And I think the other thing is I think my dream of this would be to love to create groups of men, right? I was very fortunate, and me and Stacy got on this topic yesterday, with the guys that I was surrounded by in college, right? I look back and they were such an oddball group. I mean, of different backgrounds, but you don't realize, I look forward now, 30 something years forward, and these guys are vice presidents, CEOs of companies. And we're super close. There's not probably a week that doesn't go by that I don't talk to at least one of my fraternity brothers. I'm an only child, so I didn't have the siblings. So when I went to college, this group of guys that I kind of bonded with, we were on there, but that's what Stacy and I were talking about. They held you accountable, right? I mean, if you didn't go to class, they came and got you. If you didn't pay your dues, they would shoot you with a paintball gun, right? And mark you. There was all of this stuff, and we'd laugh about these lessons that we learned. And I told them one night, I guess it's been probably about 8 years ago, I say night, it was a day, it was a breakfast. And one of my good buddies, Keith Johnson, who I hope to be a guest one day, he is a true mentor to me, not only in my personal career, but also just as a person who I think gives great advice. So he came up with this idea that we were going to reach out to all of our fraternity brothers and create this breakfast, right? Everybody that was in the construction industry. He and I were in sales, and we were trying to get everybody around. And all of a sudden I got in there and I was looking around. I was like, holy crap, then these guys these are some big decision makers, right? And I didn't realize that. I said, I always thought y'all were a bunch of goofballs, but in reality, you guys are super, super intelligent, super smart, but it formed a foundation. I was very lucky to be a part of that group, right? I didn't know how lucky I was at the time, but I look back at that. If we can create groups in communities, right? And we get it God-centered, it becomes something that it builds on, right? You guys hold each other. I can't be there. Stacy can't be there, but we give you the lessons in the toolbox to build that basis, right? Small kids, young kids, middle-aged men. You bring them all together. That way they have something to go to, because I think that's another thing in this day and age. These guys feel like they're on their own. They don't have a resource. They're looking for it, right? They may go to church. They don't like it. They leave, right? And I think most churches, if you ask if the membership's on there, it's typically the women. The women start coming, right? They then force the man to come there, which should be the reverse. It should be the man going there first, right?
Well, in statistics, if you study that, Scott, most men, if you get the daddy going, if you get the daddy to church, or excited about the Lord or whatever, if you win him, then you win the whole family. That is a statistic that's out there, that if you win him, you get them all. And sometimes if you get the mom, you may get one or two of the kids. And for like me, my dad wasn't a Christian growing up, and he was a professing atheist, but he was an amazing person. You care if he was an atheist or not, he was an amazing dad. He taught me how to hunt, fish, everything else. But my mom, when I became a teenager and got really wild and began to do crazy stuff, my mom had no control over me. Like, I didn't want to go to church. She would ask me to go, and she'd go, and I'm like, no, I'm not going. Daddy ain't going, I'm not going. Yeah. I'm going to stay home with Dad. We're going to go, build tree stands. We're going to go fishing. We're going to, I want to hang out with him. And so, and I see that in a lot of, being a pastor all these years, I see that where guys, if you win the dad, you get the dad, there, and get him excited about those things, then you will get the whole family. Yeah. It's a proven fact. And so that's what, like you said, that's what we want to do, is we want to build those groups all over the United States and elsewhere. And so that's our passion, our goal for this podcast, is to win men, to help men to become those guys. And to build those groups, and looking at your group, and it's amazing. I mean, it really is. And I was thinking while you were talking yesterday and today, I was like, man, that's how the divine appointment. I always talk about divine appointments. Meeting people like me, meeting you. I still am blown away that I got to meet Scott Whittle And you say, well, who's Scott Whittle? Well, to me, he's somebody profound that God's put in my life that I don't take for granted, bro.
Yeah.
I don't take it for granted that me and you are sitting right here today for this very reason, for this very moment, and for this very cause, what we're doing. And so, I mean, I'm still amazed that I'm friends with Scott Whittle.
We joke about it because now Stacy and I have been working together for about six years
yeah.
now, and we're all the time. Every time it would come duck hunting season, me and Stacy, we'll talk about it. And
Yeah.
my wife, who knows me better than anybody, she talks to Stacy this past year, and she goes, Scott Whittle isn't going to ask you, right? And Stacy, he's like the person who makes the first move, right? He makes the first move, and he puts me and says, "Hey, you want to go?"
I was like, hey, I'm going to be at this ramp, and I'm not telling I'm not dropping my pins on this. I said, I'm going to be at this ramp, this boat ramp. You be there at this time, and lo and behold, he was there, and I didn't know that about Scott. Here's the crazy thing, Scott. Me and my dog Buck, my black lab, would hunt by ourselves many mornings, prior to me and Scott hunting together. And I really needed a hunting buddy, and he wanted to go hunting.
Yeah.
But here was the thing: he never would voice it,
Yeah.
and he said, "Well, I'm just not the person who would invite myself," and I respect that. But here again, I was going by myself, and my wife don't want me hunting by myself. She's like,
Yeah.
"That's dangerous. Don't you go out there by yourself. Anything can happen on that river, or anything can happen on that boat. Whatever lake you're at. Find you somebody to hunt with." Well, that used to be my boys, but now they're semi-professional hunters, and they got this little crew that they run with that that Dad's no longer invited. I taught them how to do it, took them and showed them, and now I'm no longer invited. And so I said, okay, guys, if that's how it's going to be, I'm fixing to get me a posse. I'm fixing to get me a crew and son. And I just look back now, and being a hospice chaplain, Scott owns this hospice company, and him and his wife and here's the things that I regret a lot of times in life is not spending more time with people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I wish I could go back now. I told my wife, I said, man, I wish I was hunting with Scott 10 years ago. I said, I wish me and Scott 6 years ago when I met him began to hunt together then. And so I can't, look back. I can only look forward, and I'm looking forward to
I'm going to give you
the
something to talk about.
many hunts.
I'm going to crack you up, Stacey, because if it's going to happen, it's going to happen to me.
Oh yeah, it's funny. It's so funny, and so we're excited to share those hunts with you guys, and looking forward to future guests. We're working on our guest list right now, and we've got our first guest lined up for our next podcast. You don't want to miss it. It's going to be a good time, and you're going to hear from some young men and how they've developed and answered the call to do what they're doing. We want you to be a part of that next podcast and be with us. We may ramble, we may bounce off each other. That's something we're really good at, is bouncing off each other and just talking. And duck season's over with, but I'm still thinking about ducks. I mean, I just can't. And here's the reason why. Here in North Georgia, it's crazy because it seems like 2 weeks after season, all the ducks show up.
Yeah.
And we had this big rainstorm, this flood. The rivers were flooded out. There's sheet water everywhere in fields, pastures. And so riding back home from a town that I was visiting hospice patients in, I got to noticing all these ducks everywhere. I mean, there's ducks everywhere. And I'm like, and I was telling Tanner, I was like, man, I said, there's more ducks now than there was back in the season. And it never fails. Every year in Georgia, there's just, a massive amount of ducks that show up about 2 weeks after the season's over. And I think that's God just kind of keeping me humble. Like, hey, pulling the joke on me.
Well, we're going to do the next big season for us is turkey. So for you guys, I was a big time turkey hunter. That's actually where I got my love of hunting. I grew up in a household. My dad went, but I never was. I was not one of those guys that was going to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I used to laugh at people that would have bass boats with 150 horsepower doing 50 miles an hour. I said, I've never seen a fish swim that fast. We would always laugh, and I wasn't. And I met a unique individual working a job. He and I are still good friends to this day. His name's Ronnie Goins. He's probably one of the most prolific turkey callers. He's never competed, right? But I have seen this guy for years. He taught me, and I'm going to say this, he taught me how to hunt. He taught me how to deer hunt. He taught me how to turkey hunt. And really, turkey hunting became my passion. I haven't done it for several years. I got into striper fishing there for a while, and that was always the thing that was on there. Stacy now has put the gauntlet down that we're going to go turkey hunting.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
I'm going to have to get my calling back out, finding out what works. And we want to give you guys insight to that, right? I mean, for guys that I used to laugh, and me and Ronnie were talking a couple of weeks ago, and I was telling him, I said, hey man, I want you to be a guest. And he goes, man, Bubba, I'm just not feeling good these days. And I said, I just want to impart your wisdom on people, right? How do you do it? How did you learn to do this? And I joke about the time when I started, I was an adult. So for me, I had to write notes, right? I've got these books. And so when I would take kids hunting, the first thing I would do is I would give them, if I went deer hunting, this is how all the things that I know about deer hunting in a short little thing, and I would give it to them. And if I went turkey hunting, I would give them this. And I said, because I wish somebody would have given me that. I had to draw it out of Ronnie's head and ask 9,000 questions like my grandson to try to get the answers. And sometimes I know that I would probably drive him nuts, but I learned a lot, right? And you guys that are starting this, I mean, we're appealing to everybody that maybe that are probably way better than we are. I know.
Oh, yeah.
And we got people that have never done it before, right? And we want to be a person and a resource that you could call in, or you listen and maybe we give you a little tidbit. How do you set up in the morning? How do you roost them at night? What's the best call for this?
Yeah,
What's the best call? And Stacy and I were joking about the other day. I was driving in. I hadn't done it in 20 years. Everywhere I'm looking for turkeys, right?
Oh, yeah,
so the preemptive strike, and that's what I told him in the old days, in the early 90s, there wasn't that many. So everything was an ambush kill, right? I mean, you'd get on your belly and crawl for 500 yards to
walk through creeks.
Hope to goodness that you didn't do it. And I always used to have this saying that if they could smell you, you would never kill one. These things it's like hunting the elusive raptor. That's what they would look like coming across the yard.
Yeah.
So that, I mean, it's a cool experience though. But if you ever shoot one, there's nothing like that excitement, man. It's almost euphoric when you get a part of it, because you know what you had to do to get there, right?
Oh,
and you knew what everything had to be right. And we were laughing the other day, I guess a couple of months ago. Hunter Ferrier from Spring Legion, his wife, her mom works for us, and we were in here, and Peyton had come by, and she was talking about that Hunter had taken her and killed one, and I told her, I said, you don't realize how big of a deal that is, right?
Exactly.
Even if you've never gone, and he may be the best, basically, turkey caller out there, and he's calling them in for you, you to be still enough to get a shot at one is an incredible feat in itself. So for you guys and turkey hunting isn't easy, right? It's not as, like I said, I'm not going to say duck hunting is easy, but I think turkey hunting is on a skill level is probably one of the hardest skill sets to learn. There's so many different calls, which ones work, and if you make the wrong one, it's over, right?
Yeah.
Once he makes it and he determines that you're not, he's gone, right?
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that we're going to try to delve into that. We're going to bring some guests on that are incredible turkey hunters that we're going to have here. So you guys tune in.
And that's what I'm excited about. And I've had more failures than successes at turkey hunting. And I look back over the years I've been hunting turkey since I was 19. My uncle introduced me to it, and I fell in love with it. I mean, that was my passion, and I just did it. I mean, I think over duck hunting, I'd rather turkey hunt. And but just having that Tom come in and do his thing and watch him and being successful and even failing at it just keeps driving me back more and more. So the month of March we're going to talk turkey. We're going to be talking turkey. And so it's really cool, Scott. In our town, we have a 5-time world champion turkey call maker. And so I'm hoping to get him on, and then we're hoping to get Hunter on with Spring Legion's. Now we're saying this, we're not guaranteeing it. We're hoping that when he passes through this spring that we can get Hunter on and
maybe even go on a hunt and video.
And take Hunter and so March is going to be talking turkey. We're going to be talking about scouting, what we got in our bags, what we're carrying out there on the field, public land, private land, roosting, all the things. We're going to be talking turkey next month, the month of February or month of March, and so you don't want to miss that. And once again, just practical wisdom and wit from Scott and everyday life stuff and what God's doing in our lives and all that good thing. And so you don't want to miss next month. It's going to be incredible. And so we appreciate you guys tuning in today, being part of this podcast. And if, once again, like Scott said, if you have any questions, put those in the comments. Let us know what you like to hear or what we can do to help you or any questions you have. Just give us some feedback, and hopefully, Scott, we're working on a website. We'll have a website where because I've already had people ask me, hey, where can I get merch?
Yeah.
And
we're working on that.
Well, I kind of grin and laugh, and I'm like, merch. I mean, that's crazy because I didn't even thought that far really in putting merch out. And
so the merch we have now is stuff that we are buying. And I'm going to tell you now, Stacy is the most prolific person of style, right? I mean, he is going to have the best of best. And I think that's right, because if we do produce merch, it's going to be the best of best. We're going to make sure that it's the top quality. We're going to give you stuff that if we're going to put it out there, it's going to be stuff that we would want, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So
yeah. And it's going to make you feel good about it. And I laughed at that because Scott gave me a really hard time during duck season about my Walmart gloves, and he's like, man, you got a $500 outfit on with a pair of $5 gloves. He said, this ain't happening. He said, we ain't going out like that. And so they were a pair of leather gloves with Sherpa or something on the inside, and so driving that boat in 19-degree weather was warm. They were warm for that, but so we want to put the best out there for you in everything. I mean, these podcasts, we want the best for you in merch. Whatever we do, we want it to be the best for you and something you'd be proud to have and to wear and to share and to promote, first of all, Christ. And so coming to the end of this thing, hearing the call, it's all about the call, and it all starts with that call on your life. Have you heard the call of God? Have you? And we were talking about how simple it is the other day. Scott had sent me a video. He sent it to me and the pastor, and talking about how simple salvation is, and hearing the call of God and hearing God's call on your life. It all starts there. I believe, you can achieve a lot of things in life. You can do a lot of stuff. You can do a lot of good stuff, a lot of great stuff. You can be a part of a church. You can be a part of an organization. You can be a millionaire. But if you don't have God in the mix of all that, what good is it? And so that's what we want to encourage you men. If you're out there listening today and you haven't heard the call of God, we just want to encourage you to heed it and listen, and because He's calling you. You may be agnostic. You may be atheist. You may not even know where you stand. But He's created you for a purpose and a reason and a platform, and there is a call on your life. I want to help you with that call, and it all starts right there.
Until next time, be highly favored and blessed.
Yes, and as your little grandson says,
like and subscribe.